Number 389. 389. Let us sing. $283. Number 283. Our next psalm is number 559. Number 559.
We'd like to welcome everyone to our services tonight. This is Jerry Nall speaking for the congregation. We especially welcome our visitors, and we request that you fill out a visitor's card located on the back of the pew and leave this laying on the pew when you leave. Others serving the worship tonight are Marion Grider, who's directing our singing. Opening prayer will be led by Ricky Nall, and Jim Warren will have our closing prayer. Our speaker tonight is Ron Gilbert. We want to remind everyone of our gospel meeting that will begin on September 9th and run through the 12th with Barry Grider of Memphis. Whitwell has a gospel meeting that begins on September 23rd and runs through the 27th with Willie Franklin. On September 2nd, which is next Sunday, we'll begin the fall quarter. Promotions will also be on this day. We regret to announce the passing of Phil Williams, who is David Williams' brother, and his burial was today. And Jimmy Long, a longtime missionary, passed away on Thursday night after a long battle with cancer. Check the bulletin for a list of sick and add the following: Ed Troxel, Bill Swafford, and Katie Owens. And now we'll have the opening prayer.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, look over and care for each every one of us. May our minds and our be ready to learn and study more about these so that we can go out into the world and bring others back to thee. Be with the families that have lost loved ones, families of the sick and the servicemen and their families, so that someday everybody can get back to their everyday walks of life. Look over and care for us as we go through this sermon, this service, and look over and care for us. Amen.
559. What a song of Our imitation song tonight will be number 256. Number 256.
Good evening, brethren. It's good to see everyone. We're certainly glad that you're here. On behalf of the Williams family, let me be first to thank the congregation for everything that was done today for that family. Sister Williams, David's mother, longtime member of the Bridgeport congregation, was just very, very thankful and very appreciative that we would allow them to use the building and provide the meal and everything, and it was very well done. And thanks to all the ladies who helped prepare and as well as helped serve today. You were very much appreciated, and I know the family is very, very thankful. Good family, many congregations represented in that family, and they were each one so quick to express their gratitude. So let me pass that on to you. We're starting a series tonight, just 2 lessons. Our gospel meeting will begin the 3rd Sunday from now, and so I wanted to try to get both of these in. But what I wanted to look at is the atheists' attack at our system today, at America, just how we are really put through it. I was talking with David Smith, and believe it or not, I was listening. I was listening, and he was doing some talking, and some of the things that he was saying I was very appreciative of is right where I had been on some things, and he just said, you know, I'm really thinking that we're going to be going through some trials. We're going to be having some pressures, that things are not looking good. He was telling me of a story of riding to Smithville 25 years ago with a denominational preacher who he was going up there to see a granddaughter of that preacher. And the man was saying then, you know, if God didn't do something soon, that he was afraid that the Lord might have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, if that man were still alive today, imagine what he would say. Things have changed. The old schools, they're not quite what they used to be. Things look different now, a lot newer. Lighting has changed, but there's also some things that they're kind of amazing. If you'll notice, there's that's not a bell for when the for when the classes change. That's a video camera. One of the first things that I noticed when I went back to my old high school, which had turned into a junior high, and I just kind of wanted to go in and see the place. Hadn't been there in a long time. This has been many years ago, probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. And I went into what was the old ROTC wing. And I kept noticing all these black bubbles, you know, hanging down from the ceiling. And I noticed those a lot in department stores. And you know as well as I do what those are. Those are simply covers for cameras or fake ones to make you think that there's a camera there. It's kind of expensive to put hundreds of those in there, so you don't know which one has one, which one doesn't. But those are what those are for, and that's to watch people, to look for things. Didn't have those when I was in school. Probably didn't have them when you were in school. Didn't have metal detectors either. But one thing that we did have from time to time, but not near as often as I believe takes place now, you've got the drug dogs going through. You know, when I was in school, marijuana was a problem, or was becoming a problem. Probably a lot of you here, that wasn't the case. It probably wasn't even thought of. But it was when I was younger, when I was in school. Now, the authorities have their hands more than full with all the various drugs and paraphernalia and things that are out there now, of which I'm like probably a lot of you couldn't even begin to describe and don't even know exactly what all it does. But there are a lot of things now that children are having to go through that me and you didn't go through. The schools are important. It's been recognized fact by many institutions. Adolf Hitler says, "Let me control the textbooks, and I will control the state." That's a pretty simple thing. A lot of times when you would find the Catholic Church well established in a place, one of the first things they would do is set up what we call parochial schools, where they start teaching young children at a very young age catechism and the doctrine of the Catholic Church. It's one of the reasons it's been around so long, is that they start indoctrinating children at such a young age, and not just a Sunday school class, not just a story about Jesus every now and then. I'm talking 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's an indoctrination. Adolf Hitler, in a speech in November 6, 1939, now this is before he really got going good. Notice he says, "When an opponent declares, 'I will not come over to your side,' I calmly say, 'Your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community.'" You think about that for a moment. Think about the influence that you have on your children, and think about the influence that society, that school, has on your kids. Where do they spend most of their time? Who do they spend most of their time with? The family? I'm afraid that's not the case. Most of the time it's with people you probably wouldn't want them spending time with. That's just the nature of it seems today. I want us to take a look back years ago at what our kids were doing all day when they were in school. This is called the McGuffey's Reader. This was an eclectic primer, and of course this is very old. Mr. McGuffey lived from 1800 to 1873. This was the standardized reading text for most schools during the 19th century. That's from 1801 to the end of the beginning of the 1900s. Every school had it. It was just what they read. First published in 1836, 6 levels of difficulty, contained religious messages and sought to instill morality in children. Over 120 million sold from 1836 to 1890. I know that number might not sound very high for us today, but that's more people than you had in the United States during that time. Our population has really grown. Practically every American who attended public schools during the second half of the 19th century, let's say 1850 to 1900, learned moral and ethical lessons from McGuffey's readers. The second reader came out in 1836. Notice some of the chapters. Chapter 33 was praises or praise to God. Chapter 44, how the world was made. Chapter 62, the Lord's Prayer. Chapter 83 and 84, the Ten Commandments, and about using profane language. Not teaching them how, but talking about the fact you shouldn't use profane language. That's what kids read 100 years ago. The third eclectic reader came out around 1837. Notice chapter 40, the goodness of God. Chapter, 55, touch not, taste not, handle not. That's a story based on Colossians 2:21, teachings on Colossians 2:21. The gospel invitation. Imagine that. Chapter 65 is entitled The Gospel Invitation. And that was printed in the school books that your grandparents, my grandparents, our great-grandparents were reading. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely amazing? The elementary, the Blueback Speller, the spelling book, the Blueback Speller. Noah Webster, of course, was the author of this, began in 1857. They had copyrights 1880, 1908. Notice some of the things. The Bible, or the Holy Bible, is the book of God. It says to filch is to steal. We must not filch. Good men obey the laws of God. Imagine that being said in the schools today. God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and all that was made was very good. That is in the school book that little children were reading 100 years ago in this country. We go to church on the first day of the week. They printed that. Noah Webster printed in his Blueback Speller, and it was dispensed all out throughout the United States, Sabbatarians, Muslims, Jews, and atheists notwithstanding. They printed it, and they put it in the schools, and they said, teach this. And look at the kind of society we had in the early 1900s. Notice this on page 34. God will bless those who do His will. Amazing, isn't it? Notice page 41. The preacher is to preach the gospel, the good news. What is the good news? Of Jesus Christ. Amazing. Notice on page 88, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust can corrupt, based on Matthew chapter 6 at verse 20. Notice some of the words they had to learn to spell: Christ, Christmas, Christendom. Nowadays, you can't even have a nativity scene in town on public property. I'm talking about little statues. We don't even want to have that. We want to try to eradicate everything Christian from the face of our country. Isn't that amazing? Delia Russell was kind enough to bring a couple of the books that she stole from school when she was there. No, I'm just teasing. Back in the day, you bought your school books. Unlike when I was in school, you didn't buy it. You turned it in at the end of the year. But there's some neat things in this. On page 28 of the poetry book that she read, it says, I saw 3 ships. I saw 3 ships come sailing in on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day. I saw 3 ships come sailing in on Christmas Day in the morning. This whole poem is about some of the things this child experienced on Christmas Day. Nowadays, we're not even allowed to talk about it. There's a poem on page 103 that says, God's world. O world, I cannot hold thee close enough, thy winds, thy wide gray skies, thy mist, thy roll and rise. The woods this autumn day that ache and sag, and all cry with color. The next one says, stretch me apart, Lord, I do fear. Thou'st made the world too beautiful this year. Talking about God's world, talking about God, and appreciating the great things that God has done. There's poetry here entitled Christmas Morning. If Bethlehem were here today. Goes on to talking about meeting the baby in the manger. Absolutely amazing. And children were studying this, of course, in Delia's time. Now, Delia's probably not going to tell us how old she is. but I know she's got children my children's age. On page 92, Psalms 23, the entire psalm. On page 92, the bottom of that page, and the next page, Psalm 100, the entire psalm. Folks, that was in the school book. That's in our lifetime. This is not some archaic thing, that was dug up in the pyramid somewhere. This happened in lifetimes of people sitting in this very audience right now. There's a school book, a history school book that she brought as well. And it talks about why the Puritans came to this country. Why did they come? Because they did not like what things were happening at the Church of England. They wanted to come over here for religious freedom so that they could practice New Testament Christianity and not have to be under the state. The state church in England, you were going to be English. You were going to be an Anglican. You were going to be an Episcopalian, if you will. And they didn't want that. And over, the things that are in this history book is absolutely amazing. Talks about George Washington's prayer and the fact that Abraham Lincoln's mother encouraged him to read his Bible. You don't read about those things today. Our children are not being taught those things today. Exactly what are our young people being taught? We talked about this some. You're an animal. And you have common heritage with earthworms. 100 years ago, our kids were being told how important they are and how great God is and His creation and how important they are and their soul and how to treat men. Today, you're but an earthworm. We know, for example, that humans evolved from common ancestors we share with other living primates, such as chimpanzees and apes. Like all other forms of life, humans are products of evolution by natural selection. You're just lucky to be here. You're lucky dirt. In earth science, this book says humans probably evolved from bacteria. That's great, isn't it? Man, you're a bacteria that lived more than 4 billion years ago. Come on. You look at the half-life study of radiation. This earth would have been uninhabitable by anything if it was 4 billion years old, just because radiation would have been so strong. Notice this right here. By 7 months, the fetus looks like, this is talking about a child. This is talking about a baby, a human baby in the mother's womb. Notice it says by 7 months, the fetus looks from the outside like a tiny, normal baby. Oh, but it is not. It's a tomato. Or maybe it's a watermelon. Or maybe it's a raccoon. You know exactly what that baby is. But this textbook says it is not, because it hasn't breathed air. Well, it will in just a few short days if you'll leave it alone. It looks like a baby, a normal baby, but it is not. Absolutely amazing. Not a baby at 7 months. Rape and evolution. Now let me show you what scientists get away with. Rape is evolutionary, biological, and natural. It's kind of like getting hungry, needing to go to the bathroom. It's natural. Rape itself is an adaptation, an adaptation, a product of direct selection for rape in the past. Our male ancestors became ancestors in part because they conditionally used rape. Try running for the Missouri State Senate and saying something about rape, and they'll run you out of town. Now, I realize, if y'all are familiar with what, I had to look this up. All I've done is seen the headlines. So I looked up what the man said today. And yeah, he made a kind of a foolish comment. I know what he was trying to say about sometimes the anxiety and stuff of a rape can cause a woman not to have the normal process. And I understand what he was trying to say, but he shouldn't have said anything along those lines. Bottom line is, rape is bad and should never be practiced. But he is being absolutely run over the coals. He's apologized, said, listen, I used the wrong words. What I was trying to say, and what he was trying to say, is that if a woman is raped, the automatic solution is not killing the baby. That's a third party, if that's a pregnancy. But always remember, brethren, always remember, friends, that rapes, that babies by rapes, abortions by rapes are 0.0002% of the abortions that are done in this country. They're not even significant enough really to talk about. Most of the rapes done in this country are simply out of birth control purposes. It's simply somebody says, hey, listen, I want to live the life, and I got pregnant, I don't want to be pregnant, so I'm going to abort the baby. It's got nothing to do with rape. That's thrown in there as an emotional tag to try to get people's blood pressure up and make them think, well, we're going to make people, and one of the things that just absolutely amazed me, I was reading that, and I saw where President Barack Obama made a comment, and it really surprised me because he says, it's incredible that we're allowing politicians who are mostly males to make decisions about the health care of women. Now, I want you to listen to what he just said. We're letting politicians make decisions about health care for women? The man who's responsible for the single greatest act in health care reform is telling us that we shouldn't let politicians make decisions about. I just found that amusing. Apparently you don't think it's as funny as I do. But I thought that was incredible. But the bottom line, that the whole thing that's behind that is the fact this man was trying to say, listen, that the government needs to have some type of restraint on abortion. Now, we believe that when it comes to drugs. We believe that when it comes to crime. You know, the government is there for some type of restraint. In this country, most of the rapes that are performed simply because somebody is using that as birth control. And you can look at the stats all you want to. They're there. I'm not just making this up. Incest, rape, don't even make up 1% of the abortions that are done in this country. And brethren, the amount of abortions that are done are up in the millions. It is absolutely amazing to me. I can't, first of all, understand how you can have that many. This is from Randy Thornhill in 2001. Did you hear about this? Was this man raked over the coals? But right now, that fella Aiken made the statement. What basically he's trying to say is we shouldn't just have a free choice of abortion. You know, a woman's right to choose. Choose what? To kill the baby? And I realize that's been an ongoing argument in this country for quite some time. But the Bible's very clear, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. And you can't get a more innocent victim in the whole world than an unborn baby. Now, both the English law, remember, English law is based on the Magna Carta, which says that the queen or the king should uphold the laws of God, just like our Constitution is based upon the laws of a greater one, the Creator, if you will. You know, both based on that kind of, and both these abortion laws that England has, as well as America, which is basically, you want an abortion? Go. There's the door. Okay, and we'll even help you pay for it most of the time. Those came from bills that started out to allow a lady to have an abortion because she was raped or because of incest. That's how it started out. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This happens, this guy doesn't have to pay for it like they're paying it today. Brethren, it's there. We need to be aware of it. These are some of the general science textbooks we looked at in which they're telling our kids basically from the first grade, hey, guess what? 4.5 billion-year-old Earth. And they throw in pictures of dinosaurs and all that things that really make it, kids dig dinosaurs. Man, I mean, Sawyer, he loves dinosaurs. He runs around, you got to watch out at our house. You're liable to be eaten by one of those rubber dinosaurs because it gets kids' attention. These science books, the colorful pictures, and they just haphazardly say, hey, the Earth's 4.5 billion years old, and so what do our kids learn? That's what they're learning. We talked about sowing those seeds. The second grade, same thing, 4.5 billion years old, over and over again. The idea of the Big Bang is permeated through these books that our kids are reading, and I'm so thankful. I've had many teachers, after teaching lessons like this, I've had many teachers come up to me and say, you know, I have to teach science. There's this part I do, but I'm pretty selective in what I say. And I, you know, can, and one of the great things about being the teacher is you can choose the things that are going to be on the test and so forth. Guess the standardizing test makes that a little harder now, perhaps. But I've always appreciated Christian teachers who were trying to do what's right, morally, and also trying to do a good job with teaching the children. It's a tough period. It's a tough place to be. We talked about the atheists. Now, notice this man, Richard Luton, and he's doing an article here in which he's reviewing a book by Carl Sagan. He says our willingness to accept scientific claims against common sense. Listen to what he's saying now. It's important. Our willingness, he's talking about atheists, people that don't believe in God. Our willingness to accept scientific claims against common sense is the key to understanding of the real struggle between science and the supernatural. He says, hey, we admit we believe things that are just far-fetched. They're just, you got to take a leap of faith to believe it. And it's next week when you look at some of the fossil records that we're going to show, you can see just how imaginative these people get trying to believe something. Because Carl Sagan, these guys who are honest will tell you that the way that we've got it figured out, the Big Bang, all of that, can't possibly be true. But what else is there? The Creator. And boy, we just can't have that. That's what this man's explaining. We believe claims against common sense. And why do we do that? We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity. For instance, the Big Bang, and everything should be going out, should be flying in the same direction, spinning the same way, and yet you've got these moons on planets that are going the wrong way. And not only are they going the wrong way, but they're spinning the wrong way. The law of centrifugal force says that can't happen. But they say, hey, don't worry about it. You got to believe it. It's science. He says, in spite of the patent absurdity, this is a scientist writing, brethren. This is not a Christian. This is not an ex-Christian. This is a scientist who's saying, yeah, there's things out there that we're saying they don't make any sense at all. Absolutely don't. But you got to believe that, because if we don't believe science, well, what does that leave? And you know the implication. A God, a creator. We are forced to our adherence to materialism. No matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. In other words, they believe in miracles, they believe in the mystery of things as long as it's got the label of science on it and doesn't come with moral obligation. Amazing. Moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. Isn't that telling? We can't let God in. Man, if we let God in, He's going to make us do things, you know? We're going to have standards and moral things, and absolutely amazing. Richard Dawkins, probably one of the most famous atheists today, says, I'm attacking God, all gods, anything and everything supernatural, wherever and whenever they have been or will be invented. That's where he's doing. That's what he's after, and that is where he is going. American culture for 150 years was friendly toward Christianity. America was considered a Christian nation. But for the last 50 years, brethren, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The forces of humanism just says, hey, listen, the ultimate reality is us. Whatever we want, whatever makes us feel good. Atheism, there is no God. Hedonism, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. Hedonism, the idea of pleasure first. And skepticism, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, have been aggressive in their assault on the Christian religion. And our children, we have been through those assaults and will continue. And your kids will go through it, and they're just going to get worse. As Brother Smith and I were talking today, or I was listening and he was talking, I believe it's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to get worse. America's religious, moral, and spiritual foundation is literally, before our eyes, disintegrating. America's fighting a culture war. We're in a battle, just like Paul would say, not with weapons, but a spiritual war. The central issue is God and the Bible. As Christians, we need to hear the battle cry and know what to do when atheism attacks. And that simply don't let them get away with it. Hold their feet to the fire and tell them, listen, you believe in tall fairy tales. And if they're honest, you can even quote their own men who say it couldn't have happened this way, but what else are we left with? We'd have to believe in God, and who wants to do that? Every effort's being made to eradicate all public references to God and Christianity. There are many Americans trying to silence God. You know that as well as I do. Do you realize in some states that roadside crosses have been offensive? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't like seeing these. They bother me. It saddens me, I guess I should say. I keep driving under that sign, you know, there in before you get to Jasper. And I think last night or the night before last, it was 622 people have been killed on Tennessee highways this year. I can't even get my hand around that. Can't get my mind around it. 622 people. I'm just talking about people dying in car wrecks. That's amazing to me. So many people. Roadside crosses. Imagine somebody wants to mourn their loved one, sticks a little old cross out beside the road. I don't like seeing them because it makes me sad, especially when they put a name on there. And yeah, every now and then they put a picture, and yeah, I slow down so I can see what they look like. Got one right up the road in Bledsoe County. High school kid on the way home. I remember it. Don't remember the wreck, but I remember the next day and the parts and things laying around. But offensive? You can't put up a cross because it's religious? Of course, I don't have to tell you people from Alabama, you know very well, Chief Justice Roy Moore had this statue, this monument in the building there. I mean, we're talking about the number one fella, as high as you can go, lawyer, elected person, you know, official judge, Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. And what happens? A federal judge was demanding the removal of the Ten Commandments monuments in Montgomery, Alabama. And guess what was happening in California? You can't have those references to God, but at that very moment, same day, same time period, a marker was being revealed in California in honor of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender veterans killed in action. Now, brethren, I spent a lot of time in the military, around a lot of fellas, around a lot of women as well. Not as many as guys, though. I was in combat arms. But you know what we didn't talk about? Are you transgender? Are you gay? We didn't talk about it. I was real disappointed this past couple of years ago when the chief of our country said that no longer will heroism be based upon sexual orientation. I just had one question. When was it ever? When did the President of the United States go on to put the Medal of Honor around a man's neck saying, you do like girls, don't you? That was never a question. It was never brought up. But now it's forced down our throats. Want to remove the Ten Commandments from the Alabama Supreme Court, yet they'll allow this to go on. No one will say anything. Dixon County High School, students were required to write a research paper using at least 4 sources, despite the fact that students were allowed to write about reincarnation, Buddhism, what do you call that? Moonies, things of that nature. Witchcraft, what do they call that? Wicca. And the occult, anything you can stick under that. Brittany Settle received a grade of 0 because she chose to write her paper about the life of Jesus Christ. Give me a break. Isn't that amazing? Jesus Christ is an historical figure. Incredible. House of Congress Bill, H.R. 1592. And brethren, this is one I keep my eye on. It hasn't been approved by the Senate, but on May 3rd, 2007, the House passed a new hate speech bill that would make it illegal for preachers to speak out against ungodly behavior, homosexuality, bestiality, and pedophilia, and so forth. But it hasn't law yet, and I hope that it never becomes. In Omaha, Nebraska, a student was prohibited from reading his Bible silently during free time, or even to open his Bible at school because of separation of church and state. Absolutely amazing how that has come to be, is incredible. That was something that Thomas Jefferson wrote in a document, and what they've gotten the meaning from it is totally opposite of what he was talking about. Incredible. But this is being promoted. Have you seen the titles? Heather Has 2 Mommies. Now, these are books that are being distributed in public libraries. Children are encouraged to read them. Or the book, Daddy's Roommate. Notice page 1. My mommy and daddy got a divorce last year. Now there's somebody new at Daddy's house. Mommy says Daddy and Frank are gay. At first I didn't know what she meant, so she explained it. Being gay is just one more kind of love. And love is the best kind of happiness. Daddy and his roommate are very happy together, and I'm happy too. Now, brethren, that's what's our tax dollar. That's school books. That's books that are used to do what? Try to indoctrinate children that there's nothing wrong with what God says is an abomination. The shift away from God is even permeated into Christian schools. We looked last week that, and this is one of our Christian universities. Here is over in the science department, a bone that was from 65 to 100 million years ago. That can't be. Not if you're teaching creationism. The earth is probably less than 10,000 years old, and yet right here in the campus that a lot of Christians are paying for is this fossil or replica of a fossil. Says it was from the Cretaceous period, 65 to 100 million years ago, and probably being a lot of folks, a lot of Christians paying a lot of money to have their children taught something that they didn't want them taught and sent them to that university so that they wouldn't be taught that. Absolutely amazing. I love this little chart right here. You realize that's the evolutionary chart? Oh, something just happened one day and whee, there we go. And oh man, we made a right turn. And aren't you glad we made the right turn right there and hooked back to the left? Because the last thing that I'd want to be is one of them frogs. We got lucky. We went the primate route and boy, here we are. Do you see that? And so you have scientists saying, you know, that ain't the way it could have happened. I mean, there's no way that's what had happened. But hey, you got to believe something. And we can't let a divine foot in the door. Notice this from Charles Smith's third annual report of the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism. This is in 1928. Notice it says, in the beginning was matter, which begat the amoeba, which begat the worm, which begat the fish, which begat the amphibian, which begat the reptile, which begat the lower mammal, which begat the lemur, which begat the monkey, which begat man, who imagined God. This is the genealogy of man. Is that what we want to believe? Is that what we want our children to believe? I'm so thankful that there are at least scientists out there who at least have the gumption to say, you know what, that couldn't have been. The amoeba, that one-celled creature that we thought was just, just protein, comes to find out it's all these complex little things, that hundreds of little complex things that had to be together before it could even survive. That's why Anthony Flew said, when they broke the Pandora's box, if you will, he said, what we've been teaching can't possibly have happened. It couldn't have possibly been an accident. Of course, he went on to say, that we probably were put here by aliens, but at least he did change. Next week, we're going to look at what many folks look at the evolution as it's brought out through the popular magazines, through a lot of the things, a lot of the stuff, Java Man, a lot of the things you're going to know about. And I want you to see, the reason I'm advertising this, if you will, because it's amazing. Because when you look at Time magazine, look at that monkey. I mean, it looks like Tarzan's monkey, don't it? I mean, it's almost perfect. But you will not believe the fragments of bone that they use to come up with that whole picture. And not only that whole picture, but a whole series of pictures and articles talking about how this particular animal walked and talked and some of the habits that it had, and all of this is based on the most minuscule evidence. And many times, as you're going to find out with the Nebraska man that was on display, actually it was a tooth, on display during the Scopes monkey trial, and had this great display of how he operated and what all he did and everything. Do you realize they've come out and figured out and been honest enough to say, hey, you know what, that was a pig. We're real sorry about that. Where's the advertisement for that? Where is the news that says, hey, listen, these things didn't come to pass? It's just not there. And if it wasn't for people like Brad Harriver, if it wasn't for people like Wayne Jackson and the brethren at Apologetics Press, and even some good denominational folks that Answers in Genesis, the place that has the ark they're building up in Kentucky, and Creation Museum, that are really trying to push us and let folks see, listen, it just doesn't make sense. And we're being fed a whole lot of really bad stuff. I'm thankful to men like that. I'm thankful to institutions like that. We need to try to encourage our young people. Listen, you ain't got to believe that garbage. There is plenty out there. The internet, I know, as wicked as it can be. There's some terrible things out there, but there's some very good and very wholesome things. And children today can look up the very subjects that they're studying, and they can type that in, and they can look at the creationist view of it. And they'll have men with PhDs and scientists who believe in God and believe in science, truly so-called, and will show them the truth to these arguments. One of the things I'd like to look at in the very near future, probably after our meeting, will be, for instance, where the races came from, because that's something that a lot of times people will use to try to prove evolution. And it's amazing to me that nobody's talked about how racist that is. And it's always amazing to me that folks don't bring out the race card when they're talking about Darwinism. Brethren, I'm going to tell you right now, the first few pages of Darwin's book is about as racially charged as anything you'll ever find. And he'll tell you straight up why some people are not as advanced as other people, and it's because they're just not up the evolutionary food chain far enough yet. They haven't evolved yet. And it's amazing. Nobody ever brings that up. They don't want to talk about that. That is truly amazing. So try to be here next week, and we'll look at some of the evidences that have been hoaxed upon men, perpetuated on us, throw it in our face, that, hey, here's the reality of it. This is what you believe, and it is just simply based on error. And in some cases, we'll see even flat-out lies. Just absolute, flat-out lied about it with no regrets whatsoever. Because like you saw a while ago, you have scientists who'll tell you straight up, we believe this far-fetched stuff because we can't let a divine foot in the door. Amazing, isn't it? If you're here tonight, you're not a child of God, let me encourage you. You are beautifully and wonderfully made. You are somebody, and the God of heaven loves you. He loves you so much that he sent his only begotten Son to die that cruel death on the cross, that you and I could have hope of eternal life. Believe that that's the case. Believe that Jesus is the Christ. Be willing to confess his name before men, repenting of your sins. Be baptized for the remission of your sins. The Lord says that he will add you to the church. If we can help you in any way, we encourage you to come as together we stand and sing.